What happens when your morning coffee, your protein shake, and your almond milk vanish overnight? Not from drought, but from a silent strike you never saw coming. In May 2025, China didn't bomb America's farms. They ghosted them. No warning. Just billions in soybean pork and wheat contracts erased in a digital blackout. Over 600,000 metric tons of crops now rot in silos. Midwest families are pawning tractors just to cover rent. And Trump's strongest supporters, the Heartland farmers, are bleeding from a trade war they never saw coming. And the most chilling part, this wasn't chaos. It was policy. Cold. Calculated. And if you think the damage stops at the border, you're not seeing what's already cracking overseas. In May 2025, over 600,000 metric tons of U.S. soybeans were stranded in silos across the Midwest. Unsold, unshipped, and unwanted. Not because of weather pests or demand, but because the United States, under President Trump's second-term tariffs, made itself undeliverable. Beijing didn't respond with a press conference. It responded with procurement memos instructing importers to abandon U.S. contracts and prioritize Brazil, Argentina, and Russia. According to Bloomberg, this policy shift, framed as a bid for supply chain resilience, cut U.S. agricultural access to the world's largest buyer overnight. Chinese purchases of American pork, wheat, and soy fell to near-pandemic-era lows, while Brazil's soybean exports surged 17% in Q2 2025 per Reuters. Ports in Shanghai that once moved American grain now run entirely on Latin American shipments. And what happens when the world's biggest customer walks away permanently? That's where the damage accelerates. Reuters reports that Chinese state importers signed multi-year commodity contracts through 2030 with Brazil and Argentina, locking in prices, logistics, and delivery at scales the U.S. can't match under current tariffs. U.S. soybean exports are projected to fall to 1.5 billion bushels in 2025, down from 1.865 billion last year, according to AgriSource. Dan Bass, its president, says U.S. beans priced at $10.60 per bushel can't compete with Brazil's $9 offers, especially with Chinese import duties still hovering near 10%, even after a temporary tariff pause. Cold storage in Iowa is now filled with pork from canceled shipments. In late April, China scrapped a 12,000-ton order, the largest pork cancellation since the pandemic. The shift isn't tactical, it's structural. And if Chinese buyers have already locked in their suppliers for the next 5 years, the U.S. isn't just losing exports, it's losing its place at the table. But the deeper question is who's left holding the bill. Between 2017 and 2022, the number of farms under 10 acres dropped by 14%, while those earning over $2.5 million more than doubled, according to USDA census data. During the first tariff war, bankruptcies rose 24%, in a single year the highest in a decade. Meanwhile, Food and Water Watch found that the top 10% of bailout recipients took home 54% of the funds, the top 1%, over $183,000 each. The bottom 80%, less than $5,000. JBS, a Brazil-based multinational, received $78 million in federal pork contracts despite being a foreign firm with 50% market share in U.S. pork. Tyson took another $29 million. Together, they control more than 70% of the pork market. This is less a safety net than a buyout. As Ben Murray at FWW put it, the trade war didn't protect family farms, it cleared the field for corporations. But if red states backed Trump expecting prosperity, what they got was consolidation. So how did his strongest supporters end up as first casualties? Trump won 433 of 444 farming-dependent counties in 2024. But those very counties now lead in insolvency. According to an analysis by Investigate Midwest, rural regions in Iowa, Missouri, Kansas, and Nebraska, where corn, soy, and beef dominate, are experiencing the sharpest declines in exports. In contrast, states like California and Florida, with more diverse outputs, saw less volatility. The National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition reports over $6 billion in climate adaptation, and regional market support funds have been frozen or dismantled since January. Programs helping small farmers pivot to domestic or specialty markets were among the first casualties. Secretary Brooke Rollins recently told Fox News, "We don't believe a bailout will be necessary." But that confidence stands in contrast to USDA field office closures across southern states where minority and low-income farmers rely most heavily on support services. If the next collapse looks just like the last, only deeper, are we still calling this an accident? John Boyd Jr. farms soy, corn, and wheat in Virginia. He's a fourth-generation black farmer, but in 2025, he can't even get a loan. His local USDA office shut down in the name of efficiency, and his last crop sold at below break-even. Boyd told The Guardian, "This administration is putting black farmers on the chopping block and ridiculing us without oversight." The number of black farmers dropped 8% from 2017 to 2022, while white farmers declined by less than 1%, according to the latest USDA census. This isn't just economic pressure, it's structural exclusion. And when you cut off trade, shut down field offices, and route bailout money to billion-dollar firms, who's left standing? Not the small producers, not the ones who voted for a future. So let's ask the only question that matters. Are tariffs a path to prosperity, or a quiet declaration that some communities can be sacrificed? Because what's coming next may remove any doubt. As U.S. exports collapse, the cost of food is surging across Africa and Southeast Asia, with staple imports like wheat and soy feed rising 10 to 15% since April 2025, according to the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization. Egypt, Kenya, and the Philippines are racing to secure replacement supplies from Argentina and India, often at a 12–17% premium, while nations with weaker currencies and low buffer stocks teeter on the edge of rationing. The FAO's April bulletin warned that a prolonged breakdown in U.S.-China grain trade could destabilize already fragile food systems, especially where aid-dependent imports intersect with volatile exchange rates. Humanitarian agencies are scrambling to hedge contracts as port slowdowns and container shortages compound volatility, with Pacific Northwest terminals like Portland reporting export declines exceeding 51% since the tariffs resumed. But what's most alarming isn't the price surge, it's that these shortages aren't driven by drought or war. They're engineered by economic policy. And if global food chains are cracking this early, what happens when harvest season hits in 2025? More than 22,000 U.S. farms are projected not to replant, with Bloomberg citing rising input costs, cratering export prices, and long-term contract losses to Brazil and Russia as key drivers. USDA data shows the number of farms harvesting soybeans fell nearly 11% between 2017 and 2022, reversing a decade of growth, and that contraction is accelerating. Some farmers are liquidating not just equipment, but land itself. In Kansas, one co-op sold 3,000 acres to cover a deadline triggered by collapsing port contracts. Meanwhile, younger generations are walking away entirely as federal aid programs freeze and commodity prices plunge. Soybean futures dropped to $9.03 per bushel in May, down 14% year over year, while farmers in Iowa now earn 35% less per acre than in 2020, according to AgriSource. With Chinese imports replaced and new buyers locked into decade-long alternatives, there's no clear rebound in sight. And if family farms go idle this season, what replaces them may not even speak English or pay U.S. taxes. Trump's 2025 tariff blitz is being sold as economic nationalism, but it's exposing how fragile the agricultural system becomes when trade wars override market planning. According to the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition, more than $6 billion in programs for local food systems, minority farmer aid, and climate-resilient farming have been frozen or dismantled since January. The Environmental Working Group reported that bailout mechanisms in 2018 and 2019 subsidized, encouraged, and promoted farm consolidation, not survival, with large-scale monocropping operations growing 18% from 2017 to 2022, while thousands of mid-sized farms disappeared. Secretary Rollins claims the administration is opening new markets, but Ben Lilliston of the Institute for Agriculture and Trade Policy counters that trades are stalled and nothing's really flowing, as global buyers view the U.S. as an unreliable partner. If strength means self-sabotage and stability means dependence on two multinational meat processors, what exactly are we defending? Trust is vanishing across America's heartland, not in nature, but in leadership. In Iowa, farmer confidence indices fell 43% in Q2 2025, per Purdue's Ag Barometer, while capital investment intentions hit a decade low. Generational handoffs are being delayed or scrapped entirely, with rural schools seeing their lowest fall enrollment numbers in 15 years as farm families migrate toward cities. In Missouri, A fourth-generation soybean grower told WSJ, "We're not worried about weather anymore. We're worried we don't matter." That erosion isn't theoretical. Deere's Q2 earnings call revealed an 11% drop in equipment orders from independent farmers, a clear sign that replanting isn't the plan. Community banks across the Midwest report rising loan defaults, and USDA field offices are being shuttered in what critics call a quiet exit strategy. And if the people who fed America for a century believe they're expendable, what happens when they stop planting altogether? The headlines say temporary slowdown. The numbers say permanent retreat. Soybeans are stuck. Pork is canceled. Grain's been replaced. And behind the trade war's economic fallout is something more dangerous, a cultural erasure. Farms don't reboot in fiscal quarters. They vanish in generations. And if China has moved on and rural America is being outbid by global megafirms, then this isn't about tariffs anymore. It's about whether the United States has any plan left for feeding the world, or even feeding itself. So now, it's your turn. Was this collapse inevitable, or was it orchestrated? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you think this was the worst of it, wait until you see who's buying up America's water while farms run dry. We're glad you're enjoying this video. Please like and subscribe. Check out another video that is now on your screen.